Stepmom married my dad before he died. Now she wants his estate, but she has no clue who actually owns it. At the court hearing, she yelled, "This belongs to me." I calmly said, "You should have read the prenup before signing." The judge turned to her and said 5 words that changed everything. I never wanted to step foot in a courtroom. Ever. But life has a funny way of pushing you into places you don't belong, making you fight battles you never signed up for. This one, it was against my father's wife. I won't call her my stepmother. She never was. She was just Sylvia, a gold-digging, manipulative woman who latched onto my father in his weakest years and thought she could sink her claws into everything he built. And for a while, she had everyone fooled. But she never saw the truth coming. My name is Martin Russo, but people just call me Marty. I'm 42 years old, divorced, and run my own small business in Chicago. Life's been a mix of highs and lows, but if there's one thing I can say, it's that my father, Leon Russo, worked his SS off to give me and my sister, Anna, the life we had. Dad started from nothing. He built his construction company from the ground up, worked 14-hour days, and never took the easy way out. He was tough, stubborn as HLL, but loyal to the core. And when my mom passed away, he kept going. That was just the kind of man he was. Then Sylvia showed up. She was nearly 30 years younger than him, with expensive tastes and a smile that was just a little too perfect. She met him at some charity event, and within months, she was all over him. At first, Anna and I thought it was just a fling. We figured, fine, let the old man have some fun. But Sylvia? She wasn't here for fun. 6 months in, she had a ring on her finger. A big one. Dad, of course, was over the moon. He said she made him feel young again, that she understood him in ways no one else did. Anna and I saw the writing on the wall immediately, but what could we do? He was a grown man, and if he wanted to marry a woman half his age, that was his business. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't love. It was a transaction. At first, Sylvia played her role well. She was charming, affectionate, always doting on Dad. She made sure everyone saw how much she adored him, and for a little while, I even started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, I had misjudged her. Then Dad got sick. Lung cancer. Stage 4. By the time he told us, the doctors were already counting the months. That was when the real Sylvia emerged. She started making suggestions about his will, casually bringing up financial matters at the dinner table. She took control of his medication, handled his doctor's appointments, and slowly, she cut us out. Whenever Anna and I visited, she was there, hovering, making sure we had no time alone with him. If we asked questions, she brushed them off. "Your father needs rest," she'd say, her voice dripping with fake concern. "We don't want to upset him, do we?" And then, the final nail in the coffin. 2 weeks before Dad passed, Sylvia convinced him to marry her again. In a private ceremony. No guests. No witnesses. Just her and Dad in a church with a conveniently friendly officiant. Anna and I were blindsided. "Why the HLL would you do that?" I demanded. Sylvia's eyes filled with crocodile tears. "We just wanted to renew our vows before God," she sniffed. "He wanted this, Martin. Why are you being so cruel?" I almost believed her. Almost. But something felt off. And when I looked at Dad, he wasn't his usual stubborn, sharp-eyed self. He was weak, tired, just going along with whatever she wanted. Sylvia had won. Or so she thought. A week later, Dad called me into his study. His voice was weaker than I'd ever heard it. But his eyes, those eyes that had built an empire out of sheer willpower, were sharp. He handed me a thick, sealed folder. "Read this after I'm gone." "Dad, what is this?" "Just promise me, Marty." His grip on my wrist was weak, but the urgency in his voice made my stomach twist. "Don't let that woman take what's yours." I didn't understand then, but I promised him anyway. Dad passed away 6 days later. Sylvia played the grieving widow perfectly. She wore black, shed tears at all the right moments, clung to guests at the funeral like she had lost the love of her life. I kept my mouth shut, but the second the funeral was over, she made her move. She walked into my childhood home, the house Dad built, and declared, "This is mine now." Anna and I stared at her. "You mean Dad's house?" Anna said, crossing her arms. Sylvia smiled, sickly sweet. "No, sweetie. My house. As his wife, I inherit everything." That's when I knew. She had no idea what Dad had done. I went home and opened the folder Dad gave me. Inside were 2 documents that changed everything. A prenup, signed before they got married, stating Sylvia would get nothing from his estate. The deed to the house and company, transferred to me over a year ago. Dad wasn't as blind as I thought. He saw her for exactly what she was. And he made sure she walked away with nothing. But Sylvia didn't know that yet. And I wasn't about to tell her. Let her think she won. Let her get comfortable. Because the second she stepped into that courtroom, she was in for the shock of her life. Sylvia wasted no time. The funeral was barely over before she started throwing her weight around like she was the new queen of the Russo Empire. She changed the locks on Dad's house, or at least she tried. The locksmith refused when I showed up with the deed and proof of ownership. She threw a fit right there on the porch, screaming at the poor guy until he packed up and left. "You have no right to be here," she shrieked at me, face red with fury. I stayed calm. "Actually, I do." I pulled out the documents and held them up, just long enough for her to catch my name at the bottom. Her eyes narrowed. That's when the lawsuit started. First, she filed for full ownership of Dad's estate, claiming she was the rightful heir to everything. Then, she went after the business, trying to get the board to recognize her as the new CEO. And when neither of those worked fast enough, she did what desperate people do. She played dirty. I walked into my office one morning to find my assistant, Derek, looking pale. Marty, you need to see this." He turned his monitor toward me. "Breaking news. Widow of construction mogul Leon Russo fights for her rightful inheritance." There was a photo of Sylvia, perfectly posed, sitting on the steps of Dad's house, dabbing at her fake tears. The article painted her as the heartbroken wife, struggling against her greedy stepchildren, who were trying to steal what was hers. I read every word, my blood boiling. She called me a cold businessman who didn't care about his father's wishes. She said I had been waiting for Dad to die so I could snatch everything away before she even had a chance to grieve. And then there was Anna. Sylvia claimed she had been manipulated by me, that I had turned her against her loving stepmother in some twisted power grab. I closed my eyes and counted to 10. I had expected a fight. But this was a war. "She's trying to control the story," Anna muttered, pacing my kitchen later that night. "She knows she has no legal case, so she's turning it into a damn soap opera." "Let her," I said, sipping my beer. Anna stopped pacing. "You're okay with this?" "She's desperate," I said. "She wouldn't be pulling this stunt if she thought she could win in court." Anna sighed, rubbing her temples. "So what do we do?" I leaned back. "We let her dig her own grave." Anna gave me a look. "Marty," I smirked. "Trust me." Sylvia thought she was playing chess, but she had no idea she was already checkmated. Sylvia's media stunt had the exact effect she wanted, at least at first. For the next few days, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Reporters called my office, my house, even my damn gym. Some just wanted to comment. Others outright accused me of robbing a grieving widow. And it got it worse. She had people showing up at her job, whispering behind her back. Even her friends started asking questions. "You need to say something," she told me one night over the phone. She sounded exhausted. "You can't just let her control the story, Marty." "She's controlling a story," I corrected. "Not the story." Anna sighed. "What does that even mean?" "It means she's acting like she already won," I said. "But she doesn't know what Dad did. The second this goes to court, all of this." I gestured at the latest tabloid on my desk. "Ruthless son steals estate from dying father's wife. Goes up in flames." Anna was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. "I hope you're right." "I am. But the truth?" I had no idea what Sylvia would try next. I got my answer 2 days later. I was leaving my office when a familiar voice stopped me cold. "Martin." I turned, and there she was. Sylvia, standing in my lobby like she owned the damn place, dressed in a sleek black coat, her blonde hair pulled into some expensive-looking updo. She had on sunglasses, but I could feel her smirk. "What are you doing here?" I asked flatly. She pulled off her glasses, her blue eyes flashing. "We need to talk." I stared at her. "I don't think we do." She tilted her head, like I was some stubborn child refusing to listen to reason. "You're making this much harder than it needs to be, Marty." "That's so." I folded my arms. "Explain it to me, then. What part of my dead father's estate do you think you're entitled to?" Sylvia sighed dramatically, stepping closer. "You don't understand how hard this has been for me." I scoffed. "Oh, I understand just fine." She blinked, her fake sympathy act slipping for just a second. Then she smiled, sweet, practiced, and completely fake. "Look, we can end all this right now. You and I both know this could get ugly." I raised an eyebrow. "Ugly for who?" She ignored that. "I'm willing to negotiate. A settlement. A fair one." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "A settlement?" "Yes," she said smoothly. "Half. I'll walk away with half, and we'll call it even. No more court battles. No more headlines. No more stress. It's the smart choice." I stared at her. Then I smiled and leaned in. "Sylvia," I said slowly, enjoying every second of this, "you don't own a damn thing." Her face twitched. Just for a second. Then she recovered, straightening her shoulders. "Fine," she said coolly, slipping her sunglasses back on. "We'll do it your way." She turned on her heel and marched out. And I knew. She had something else planned. I didn't have to wait long to find out what Sylvia was planning. The very next morning, I got a call from my lawyer, Tom Ridley, at 6:30 a.m. sharp. "She's coming after the company," he said, skipping the usual greetings. "She just filed an emergency motion to freeze all assets until the estate case is settled." I sat up in bed, instantly awake. "You're kidding." "I wish," Tom muttered. "She's claiming that as Leon's widow, she has a rightful stake in Russo Construction and that you're illegally cutting her out." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Jesus Christ." "Yeah," he sighed. "She's basically saying you stole the business before Leon died, and that he wasn't of sound mind when he transferred it to you. There it was. Her Hail Mary play. I swung my legs out of bed and started pacing. And the judge, what are the chances they actually grant this motion? It depends, Tom said. Normally, courts don't freeze assets unless there's real evidence of fraud, but she's pushing the grieving widow angle hard. If the judge buys into it, you could be looking at months of frozen accounts, halted projects, and a serious mess with your investors. I exhaled sharply. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about my employees, my clients, the people who depended on that company to put food on the table. I clenched my jaw. We fight it. Already on it, Tom said. Get ready, though. This is going to get worse before it gets better. I believed him. Sure enough, Sylvia made damn sure her stunt hit the headlines. The next day, I walked into the office to find my receptionist, Maria, looking anxious as HLL. You probably want to see this, she said, nodding toward the TV in the lobby. I turned. There she was, Sylvia, sitting in some staged interview, dabbing her perfectly dry eyes with a tissue. She sniffled. I don't understand how Marty could do this to me. Leon trusted him. I loved him. And now, she swallowed hard, her voice trembling. Now he's just acting like I never existed. Like I'm disposable. The camera zoomed in dramatically. I'm not fighting for money, she continued, shaking her head. I'm fighting for justice. For Leon's legacy. I almost laughed out loud. Justice? Legacy? She didn't give a damn about Dad. This was all about the money. And now, she had every news outlet eating out of her hand. Anna called me 5 minutes later. Tell me you're seeing this bullcrap. Oh, I'm seeing it. God, I want to punch her. Get in line. Anna groaned. We can't just let her run her mouth like this, Marty. People are actually believing her. Let them, I said calmly. This is the last trick she has up her sleeve. Once this hits court, the truth comes out. Anna exhaled. And what if she finds another trick? I thought about that. Then I grinned. Then I'll be ready. Sylvia thought she was winning. She had no idea what was coming. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings, press statements, and Sylvia pulling every dirty trick in the book. She played the part of the heartbroken widow to perfection, giving teary-eyed interviews about how I had stolen my father's company right from under her nose. She even showed up at a charity gala that Dad used to support, making sure to pose for pictures with the words, "Justice for Leon," pinned to her dress like some kind of grieving martyr. I ignored it. I let her dig herself deeper. But then she did something I didn't expect. She went after Dad's will. I was in a strategy meeting at the office when Tom barged in, his face tight. We've got a problem. I sighed. Another one? This is serious, he said, dropping a stack of documents in front of me. Sylvia just filed a motion to contest Leon's will. She's claiming it was forged. I blinked. Come again. She's saying the will was tampered with, Tom said, rubbing his temples. That someone, you, specifically, altered it to cut her out. I let out a short, humorless laugh. She really thinks she can convince a judge of that. She doesn't have to convince a judge, Tom said. She just has to create enough doubt to get this tied up in court for months. Maybe years. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about winning. It was about stalling. If she could drag this out long enough, she figured I'd get desperate. That I'd settle. Give her something just to make her go away. I looked at Tom and grinned. She has no idea who she's dealing with. Tom smirked. That's what I like to hear. A few days later, I got another unexpected visit. This time, it wasn't Sylvia. It was her lawyer. A guy named Brandon Cole, a sleazeball in an overpriced suit with a reputation for taking on messy cases. He showed up at my office, unannounced, flashing a plastic smile. Mr. Russo, he said smoothly, stepping into my office without waiting for permission. I was hoping we could talk. I leaned back in my chair. Talk about what? Brandon adjusted his cufflinks. A way to resolve this situation. Amicably. I raised an eyebrow. Is that so? He nodded. My client is willing to be reasonable. She's willing to walk away from this entire dispute. No further legal action, no media involvement. I smirked. Let me guess. For a price. Brandon smiled, like he had me right where he wanted me. One lump sum. Nothing unreasonable. Just a fair share of what's rightfully hers. I stared at him for a long moment. Then I burst out laughing. Brandon's smile faltered. I don't see what's funny. I wiped a tear from my eye. Oh man, you really thought I'd just pay her off? Brandon's expression hardened. Marty. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the desk. Tell Sylvia she should have read the prenup before signing. For the first time, Brandon looked surprised. Oh, he didn't know? I grinned. You did know there was a prenup, right? Brandon's face twitched. If there was a prenuptial agreement, my client wasn't aware of it. I laughed again. Well, that sounds like her problem. Brandon cleared his throat. If you're unwilling to negotiate, I can't guarantee things won't get messy. I met his gaze, my smile fading. Let them. For the first time since he walked in, Brandon looked nervous. He stood, straightening his jacket. Then I suppose I'll see you in court. You will. I leaned back in my chair, grinning. And so will the judge when they see Sylvia's signature on that prenup. Brandon left without another word. I exhaled. Sylvia had just played her last card, and she had no idea that I had already won. The courtroom was packed. It was the kind of case the media loved, a supposed grieving widow fighting for her rightful inheritance against the ruthless son. Sylvia made sure to dress the part, too. She walked in wearing a modest black dress, a delicate lace veil over her hair, as if she were still in mourning. It was pure theater, and I almost admired the performance. Almost. Anna sat beside me, arms crossed, shooting Sylvia a death glare every few minutes. Tom was calm as ever, sorting through documents like we were about to review tax filings instead of burying Sylvia's case into the ground. All rise. The bailiff called out as the judge entered. This was it. The moment Sylvia realized she had already lost. Her lawyer, Brandon, was up first. Your Honor, my client was deceived, he said, pacing dramatically. She was kept in the dark about crucial financial matters, misled about her late husband's intentions, and now, she's being denied what is rightfully hers. I barely stopped myself from rolling my eyes. Brandon continued, voice dripping with sympathy. Leon Russo was a loving husband. He would have never wanted his wife to be left with nothing. But Marty Russo, using his position as his father's son, manipulated the situation. Tom cleared his throat. Objection, Your Honor, he said smoothly. That's a lovely story, but we're here for facts, not fairy tales. The judge nodded. Sustained. Mr. Cole, stick to the facts. Brandon pressed his lips together before shifting tactics. Then let's discuss the will, he said, lifting a file. We believe it was forged or altered while Leon was in a weakened state. Tom stood. Your Honor, we'd like to enter Leon Russo's medical records into evidence. They prove he was of sound mind when he signed both the will and the deed transfer. The judge accepted the records. I watched as Brandon's confidence wavered. Then Tom went for the KLL shot. Your Honor, he said, standing smoothly. The defense would like to introduce this prenuptial agreement signed by Sylvia Russo before her marriage to Leon Russo. He walked up, placed a neatly prepared document in front of the judge, and stepped back. Sylvia's face was drained of color. Brandon blinked. A prenup? The courtroom stilled. The judge flipped through the pages, his expression unreadable. This contract clearly states that the plaintiff, Sylvia Russo, waived any and all rights to her husband's estate, business, and properties in the event of his passing. Sylvia shot up from her seat. That's not fair, she shouted, her voice echoing through the courtroom. I didn't know about that. He tricked me. Tom smirked. Your Honor, the agreement is signed, dated, and notarized. Mrs. Russo was fully aware of its terms before she married Leon Russo. Sylvia's lawyer was frantically flipping through pages, looking for some kind of loophole. But there was nothing, because my father had covered every angle. The judge sighed, setting the document down. Then he turned to Sylvia, his voice firm. Mrs. Russo, this contract is legally binding. You have no claim to your late husband's estate. Sylvia's mouth opened and closed, speechless for the first time in her life. Anna let out a satisfied exhale beside me. I just sat back, because this was what winning felt like. Sylvia stormed out of the courthouse the second the ruling was finalized. She had lost everything. No money, no company, no house. The media, of course, turned on her instantly. The same tabloids that had painted her as the helpless widow were now calling her a gold digger. Every interview, every stage performance, it all backfired. Her name became toxic overnight. I didn't rub it in. I didn't gloat. I just let her crumble. A few weeks later, I heard through some contacts that she was leaving town. Rumor was, she had burned through whatever savings she had left and was looking for another wealthy opportunity. I wasn't surprised. Some people never change. As for me, I kept Dad's business running, just like he wanted. I kept the house, the company, the legacy, and I made sure Sylvia was nothing more than a bad memory. Justice wasn't always flashy. Sometimes, it was just a signature on a page. And a woman walking away with nothing but regret.